So, you
Work
know,
hard way. I've always said, I learned the way I learned, but as long as I don't crash out, I don't mind. I haven't yet crashed out. I'm still on the roller coaster. Wales haven't broken yet.
well, this is an important topic, right? I mean, portfolio management is not something
So,
that people think about. They tend to think
yeah,
about, they take all or nothing mentalities to it, right? So they're either fully denominated in Bitcoin. And I know I may not be the best advocate for this because I kind of fall into that group. And actually, that might be
I
an
do
area
too.
where I can improve on. Um,
Yeah,
but people tend to take an all or nothing approach when really it should be a matter of degree, right? So if you have a portfolio that you're constructing, you know, just use a $1 million portfolio for sake of simplicity, right? Then
yeah.
then then you should be dealing with allocations, right, within that portfolio, and you know,
But how would you do that? What would the other bit have been held in?
well,
Because you'd be holding it in dollar, and your 5 million account starts to go down.
think about it like this, right? Even if you have a trading account, right? Say you have a $5 million trading account, right?
Yeah,
Well, I guess it depends. It can get complicated, if you denominate it in, uh, if it so like some trading accounts are Bitcoin denominated and some are fiat denominated. So
yeah. No one's Bitcoin.
yeah, so that can be confusing. But if you think about it, if your net worth is $1 million, then it's denominated in something, right? It, most people have it denominated in dollars, but
Yeah, you're hitting
whatever
really
that net
important
worth
point.
is the totality of all your assets added up.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really important point here, actually, I hadn't quite. There's something that's going through my head. I'll try and vocalize it if I can, and it's kind of complex because essentially it's like the average person lives in dollars or pounds or the dominate, whatever their local shitters are. That's how they live. You know what I mean? Their government takes that off them every year. You know what I mean? They may have a savings account of like $1,000. The following year, their buying power that was $1,000 is probably only $980 the next year, however it is. And that doesn't happen with Bitcoin. And it's so um, but Bitcoin doesn't always just go up. Over the years, it tends to. But I think this last year, I don't think it has it? I think it's been uh, has it gone up? Is it in the last year? It feels like it's been a fair
It's
market
really, I
run
would
through
just
it.
describe it as a massive trading range, for the greater part of,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But on the whole, I'd say Bitcoin is the better one to be holding just because somebody isn't diluting it. There isn't a government diluting it. There isn't a money. There isn't a government taking little bits of it here, there, and everywhere. So, but the disconnect that I'm trying to put across, which I'm not really explaining full well, is that you're constantly looking for more, and when you're crossing over being into the Bitcoin world from the dollar world or the pound world or the whatever it is, it's your local. There is a disconnect because money goes up and down. As humans, we always want more, don't we? So you want to always be in the one that does more. And I think that really messes with the psychology and really messes with the FOMO type thing. And I think it's almost like a fog or a mist, a general hum and atmosphere that hangs around you. And I think that's very difficult to clarify, drop, stroke. I think it messes with your decision making process when trading. Personally, I think that's what's happening with me at the moment,
Well,
which is why
what,
Did you ever try to stop thinking about Bitcoin dollar's value?
that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, that's a really valid point, Magic Mill. That's a completely valid point, and that's what I'm trying to do. But
because I agree with you.
Me, I have
The government,
everything.
yeah, I mean, the government, I agree with you. The government, all around the world, every single government is debasing the currency. So I agree that even if you had $1 million in the, in the early years of the 19th, right? Well, the dollar since the beginning of the last century has lost like 93% of its purchasing power. So that's a massive theft, right? But
And
yeah, if you stop to think
you
about
guys
it
have a
morally,
lira.
yeah, even that, yeah. So if you
I've
stop
got,
to think,
we had a
oh,
$1 million lira. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. So I agree
Yeah.
with you on that. But I guess the real shift of paradigm will happen when people would stop to think about, let's say I got one Bitcoin now. So let's say it's 2018, okay? So I got one Bitcoin now, and it's worth $6,000. So I can afford to spend this Bitcoin to buy 6,000 worth of goods and services in the real economy. Now, I guess the real shift would be when people would start to think, I got one Bitcoin now, what can I buy? Bypassing the dollar system, bypassing the fiat currency. Is there up there someone else which is willing to provide me goods and services for, this Bitcoin or at least fractions of this Bitcoin?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. I mean, we're so bad at
We're not there
trying to,
yet. I know
trying to
that,
internalize it.
but I hope
Um,
I hope we get there sooner or later.
oh well. Yeah. I think we all will. I mean, not about me, right? I mean, the
Well,
like the
at a certain point, the exchange ratio of Bitcoin to other currencies won't matter, and but you could still use those currencies in tandem with them, right? So you could, in the same way that the Strike app now, it uses Bitcoin without people knowing they're using Bitcoin, right? They're using dollars, their account shows dollars, but the payments are being facilitated in Bitcoin. The same thing can happen in reverse, right? You could have a
Yeah,
system where everything's denominated in Bitcoin, but it's still layered onto, if US dollar accounting system and legal system.
yeah.
But
I mean, could
people, yeah,
you should really translate all the economic system, the financial system on a Bitcoin standard, like it was before the Bretton Woods when we were on a gold standard.
yeah, I think it would be very similar. Yeah.
Because I mean, it would make sense, right? Because now you have something which is like gold, just better. So why don't you use that as a collateral and build up some sort of a second layer application? We could do fiat money if you still want to use that, but the value that you can transfer, even using fiat, okay, but it should be anchored, it should be tied and backed by something which is tangible, which is
Well,
guaranteed by mathematics. Which
here's another interesting thing to think about is that if you move into a scenario where central banks start purchasing Bitcoin, and you and me have kind of discussed that we kind of think they are secretly.
yeah, probably yeah,
Because if you're a central bank and you wanted to purchase Bitcoin, you wouldn't necessarily shout from the rooftops that you were doing it, right? You'd only do that after you're done acquiring it. Um, so maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But I'm saying in a world where they have done that, and they have done that acquisition, then then fiat currencies kind of become Bitcoin derivatives in a sense, right?
yeah, exactly.
And it's
I
kind of
mean,
similar to the gold standard in a way. Of course, there's a lot of distinctions and differences, but
yeah, the only problem I see there would be that something like what happened with the dollar could happen again. Because if you see something like, now we have central banks which are full to the brim with Bitcoin, okay? So they're now issuing tickets, which are just fiat money, which are tied to Bitcoin, okay? So what happened when, they need to expand the monetary supply again and again and again? And they start to say, you know what, those 20 bucks you're holding there, yeah, 20 years ago I said that that's the equivalent of, let's say, for the sake of example, 200 Satoshi. Now I'm telling you that that needs to be 100 Satoshi. So they can still change the way the, the derivative is tied to the underlying, to the collateral. And that's something which eventually should take the same consequences we've seen so far.
Yeah, kind of tying back into the portfolio allocation we were talking about earlier. If you kind of the point I was getting at is if you identify this big issue, right, you want to have your major allocation to the solution to this problem you identified, and you want to allocate accordingly, right? And if those allocations change, right, based on macroeconomic factors or whatever that are very valid, then it should only be like a small percentage change over time. And that's kind of a key point is that it's very small percentage change over time.
I was listening to you talking about portfolio managing, and I think everyone which has been in the crypto space for the last 3, 4 years, right? We have seen the ICO boom, the 2018 blow off top, and since the establishment of altcoins, even if you weren't, used to traditional finance, now after 4 years, you should be able to recognize that same dynamic playing out. Even if you look at, the Bitcoin dominance, there are times throughout, the cycles. Just the cycles are much more faster in the crypto space because it's younger, it's less liquid and whatever. But even there, you can see people, shifting from being more exposed into altcoins during altcoin season and being more exposed into Bitcoin in periods of maybe a bear market, for instance. So you can still rebalance your portfolio and balancing your exposure on the assets which are performing better in that period, right?
Yeah, yeah, and using small percentages because then those small percentages serve as hedges, right? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe you have 3% of your portfolio in copper, right? A commodity or chocolate or something like that. Obviously, you wouldn't want to have 100% of your portfolio in cocoa, but it's not bad to have a 3% allocation because it's a very good hedge. I mean, it may come in use.
yeah, absolutely. It's like you were saying, if you pay attention to the macro, and I'm sure someone did, because there are smart people out there, even in the traditional line. So would you say that, let's say last year, someone else out there wasn't able to recognize the massive implications that were starting to play now, like food shortages. And if you have looked at soybeans, wheat, whatever, if you have a multi-millionaire portfolio, even allocating just a 2-3% in wheat or other agricultural commodities, you don't need to have a great exposure because given the volatility that those markets have taken and the rallies that have taken place in those environments, if even a 3% could really edge your portfolio overall, if the other parts of it are kind of performing not optimally, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the key is that it's a small percentage in a portfolio, right? As opposed to
Yeah,
taking a leveraged position with your entire life savings.
no, I think so.
You know what I mean?
And you made a huge point. A lot of people are all in, or it's all or nothing. But when you start to think about how to manage a portfolio, you're not talking about a demo account or a playground account, or let's say you're starting out, you're willing to say, I'm gonna put $1,000 in this account, and I'm gonna make 1,000% in 1 year because it's all or nothing. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna be different if I lose a thousand
Well,
dollar in say
honestly,
6 months.
the best altcoin trades for the most part are the trades where somebody leaves $80 in an altcoin wallet and forget about it, and then
Yeah,
you know 3 years later it 1,000x or whatever. But that's only possible because the allocation was so small, right? If the allocation wasn't that small, that would not be possible. It's so small that
yeah,
you don't even care about it. You know.
yeah. because otherwise you're gonna really start to ride that roller coaster of emotion, and probably you're gonna sell at the worst possible time. Maybe you're gonna sell at the bottom.